This chart tracks enterprise AI. The ascending curve is the rapid acceleration of corporate adoption. The flat line is the return on investment, hovering near zero. The consensus is this gap is a design problem, not a training problem. The friction is organizational. Researchers are identifying a second singularity, a threshold where delegating judgment to intelligent systems stops producing efficiency and starts producing human skill atrophy. Organizations attempt to stop this atrophy with human-in-the-loop architectures, keeping a person in the approval chain. But these architectures are currently failing to stabilize expertise. The AI revolution is confronting a blind spot in how we define work. Without a precise account of what situated human judgment is, it is difficult to measure exactly how it degrades when it is mediated by a machine. This failure mode was mapped over a century ago, long before the invention of artificial intelligence. The architect of this diagnostic framework was the philosopher and psychologist William James. James argued that abstraction is a necessity. It is the tool that lets us breathe in the upper conceptual air. Without the ability to extract concepts from messy situations, we would be, in his words, men hopping on one foot. In 1909, he identified a specific cognitive error called vicious abstractionism. This happens when you take a complex situation and single out one feature, and then use that feature to expunge every other detail. You treat the thing as nothing but the abstracted concept, and sever your connection to the reality it came from. Translating James's theory into an operational test reveals exactly why our modern institutions are unknowingly blinding their own workforce. This diagnostic framework identifies a recurring failure mode that has become deeply embedded in the structure of modern institutions. James modeled cognition as a four-stage circuit. Throw a concept forward into a situation. Get a foothold on a consequence. Draw perception up, using abstraction as scaffolding. Finally, make the obligatory return trip into concrete reality, carrying an enriched perception. This circuit demands a specific discipline. The abstraction at the top exists only to improve your grip on the reality at the bottom. True expertise is not the capacity to remain in the abstract air. It is the continuous completion of this circuit back down into concrete reality. Institutions fail when this circuit breaks at the fourth return leg. This is the privative move. An organization takes a complex reality and treats it as nothing but the abstracted feature it has just measured. In this state, an organization mistakes altitude, the conceptual height of its data, for actual progress on the ground. This structural error is visible at a civilizational scale in the history of high modernist state management. A natural forest is an incredibly dense, diverse ecosystem of interdependent biology and chaotic, unpredictable natural geometry. To manage this resource, a state drops an abstraction over the wilderness, measuring the forest exclusively for its yield of taxable timber. The instrument of this abstraction is the administrative map. It uses rigid grid lines to represent the forest, intentionally ignoring the undergrowth. The state then manages the forest as if it were those grid lines, expunging all other ecological data from its decision-making. Using an abstraction privatively like this creates an epistemic monoculture. It eventually destroys the very physical resource the institution was trying to manage. Today, enterprise AI functions as a loop-severing technology. AI software is often marketed on its capacity to spare the worker the return trip down to messy underlying particulars. This violates the core rule of the fourth leg. The concrete reality you return to must maintain the ability to refute your concept. We can see this in standard human-in-the-loop interfaces. While the person is retained in the loop, the return leg to the raw data is automated away. The human operator is fed a pre-digested percept. Because the system has already resolved the ambiguity, the data has lost its capacity to push back or surprise the worker. This creates a completely unfalsifiable feedback loop. Without the friction of the underlying data, the system eliminates the conditions required for a person to acquire or maintain skill. This severs the human worker from direct interaction with the task environment. The person interacts only with a representation of reality rather than reality itself. Human in the loop fails because it retains the person but deletes the refutability. replacing skilled judgment with a blind administrative terminal. This framework provides a practical tool for leaders to assess their own systems. The solution is not to eliminate AI, nor is it to romanticize unmediated, raw experience. Functioning at scale requires second-hand knowledge and powerful abstractions. However, second-hand knowledge is only safe to act upon if someone's cognitive loop actually closed on the raw particulars. This creates a diagnostic gate that must be applied to any organizational workflow. You must ask, can the percept still refute you? An institutional process that returns only to a prepackaged conclusion is a hollow loop masquerading as a closed one. The focus must return to the physical, situated reality of actual human work. Keeping the loop closed requires live, refutable contact with the world. Without this grounding contact, organizations do not gain velocity. They fly blind in the conceptual air. A properly closed loop is the only mechanism that makes you the true author of your own beliefs. Allow your return leg to be automated away, and you cease to be an expert, becoming merely a terminal for other people's abstractions.